What would you do if your own father looked you in the eyes and decided you were nothing? What if the family you spent your whole life trying to please publicly humiliated you, cut you off, and thought you would just disappear quietly? Imagine sitting at that table, your name erased, your worth questioned, your voice dismissed, while everyone watches and no one defends you. But here's the part they never expected. What happens when the weak daughter is the only one holding the truth that can destroy the lie? Tonight's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about power, about silence turning into strength, about the moment a girl stopped begging for love and started choosing herself. Trust me, you will not see the ending coming. So stay with me till the end, because what happened next changed everything forever. And before we begin, if stories that hit deep in the heart mean something to you, subscribe to the channel and like this video. Your love and support keep these untold stories alive. Now, take a deep breath, because once this story starts, you won't be able to look away. My name is Ilara Hayes, and 31 years old. Last Christmas Eve, my father stood in the middle of our dining room, lifted his glass, and announced to 27 relatives that I was temporarily cut off from the family because I dared to ask why my name wasn't mentioned in my grandfather's will. People laughed. Not cruel laughter, not movie villain laughter, the worst kind, the uncomfortable, polite kind, the kind that says, "This is awkward, but we're not getting involved." I remember the heat rising up my neck. I remember the chandelier lights blurring. I remember thinking, I am 41 years old. Why do I feel like I'm 12 again? And I remember saying very calmly, "Okay." That was the only word I gave him. The next morning, at 8:12 a.m., he knocked on my old bedroom door and said, "Have you learned your lesson?" But the room was empty. No suitcase, no clothes in the closet, no framed photos on the desk, no me. And before he could call my phone, the doorbell rang. Standing on the porch was a woman in a navy wool coat holding a leather portfolio and looking like she hadn't slept. "Is Mr. Hayes home?" she asked. She was the attorney my grandfather trusted with everything, and she was about to ask my father a question he couldn't answer. But before I take you there, let me rewind. My grandfather, Thomas Alden Hayes, died in October. He was 89. He used to call me my brave one, not because I was fearless, but because I felt everything and kept going anyway. I was at work when my mom called, 7:03 a.m. I was in my small graphic design studio, halfway through a branding project for a local cafe. My coffee had gone cold. My rent was overdue by 3 days. Normal life. "Ilara," she said, her voice thin. "Grandpa's gone." The drive to the hospital was quiet. Gray sky, red lights, that strange feeling like the world should pause for grief, but doesn't. When I got there, my father was already in the hallway, crisp coat, polished shoes, talking about estate timelines to someone on Bluetooth. He didn't hug me. He nodded. My older brother Daniel stood beside him, arm crossed, jaw tight, the heir apparent. I stood 3 steps away, holding a paper cup of vending machine tea, trying not to shake. The last time I'd seen Grandpa, he'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "I've made arrangements. Don't let them make you small." At the funeral, my father gave a speech about legacy, about the Hayes name, about the next generation of leadership. He mentioned Daniel 5 times. He didn't mention me once. After the service, while people were hugging and whispering condolences, a woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes approached me. "You're Ilara," she said gently. "Grandpa spoke of you often." She pressed her card into my hand. "Call me when you're ready." Her name was Marjorie Klein. I didn't call her, because I've spent my whole life being told I'm too sensitive, too soft, too different. When you hear something long enough, you start believing it. 3 weeks later, Daniel accidentally forwarded me an email. Subject line, estate restructure proposal. It wasn't meant for me. It was between him and my father. I read every word. They were discussing how to simplify distribution by consolidating Grandpa's assets under Daniel's management. They described me as financially unstable because I freelance instead of working corporate. There was one line that made my chest go hollow. She won't push back. She never does. I sat there staring at my laptop, realizing that my entire personality had been reduced to one useful trait: compliance. That's when I called Marjorie. She asked me to come to her office the next morning. Her office was small but warm: bookshelves, old wood desk, a framed photo of her and Grandpa at what looked like a charity gala 20 years ago. "He trusted you," she said, looking straight at me. "That's not a small thing." Then she opened a file. Inside was an irrevocable trust. My name was printed clearly under beneficiary. Not Daniel, not both children. Me. "Your trust created this 7 years ago," she explained, "after a disagreement with your father about fairness. The trust held $540,000 and the deed to a lake house 3 hours north." My breath caught. "The trust cannot be altered without your written consent," she said. "Your father attempted to file a petition to modify it last week. Attempted. He claimed he couldn't locate you." I laughed. I had dinner in his house every Sunday. I left that office with copies of everything and a new feeling in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. Christmas Eve was the stage he chose. 27 relatives, wine flowing, garland on the staircase, the illusion of perfection. After dinner, he stood and cleared his throat. "As you all know," he said, "Dad left the majority of his estate under my oversight, for efficiency." He glanced at me. "Ilara will receive a modest sum to help her get on her feet." A few sympathetic smiles. "Dad," I said, quietly, "what about the trust?" The room shifted. He looked at me the way you look at a child who interrupted adults. "Don't start," he said under his breath. "I just want transparency." He set his glass down harder than necessary. "You are being inappropriate." I held his gaze. "Am I?" And that's when he said it. "Until you can behave with maturity, you are cut off financially. Consider this a lesson." Someone chuckled. My aunt avoided my eyes. My mother stared at her lap, and I felt something inside me settle. "Okay," I said. I went upstairs, packed quietly, left before dawn. When he found my empty room, he thought I'd run. He didn't know I'd stepped forward. At 10 a.m., I walked back into that house with Marjorie beside me. He was mid-sentence telling everyone how difficult I've always been. The room went silent when they saw us. Marjorie didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She placed the documents on the dining table and said, "Thomas Hayes established an irrevocable trust, naming Ilara Hayes as sole beneficiary." You could feel the oxygen leave the room. She continued, "Any attempt to alter it without her consent constitutes breach of fiduciary duty." Daniel went pale. My father laughed too loudly. "This is absurd." Marjorie slid forward a printed copy of the petition he'd filed, with his signature, dated, stamped. "Is it?" she asked. He tried to pivot. "She's not equipped to handle this kind of responsibility." I finally spoke. "You mean because I didn't choose the life you wanted?" Silence. "You taught me that strength meant obedience. Grandpa taught me it meant integrity." My brother whispered, "Dad," but it was too late. The illusion had cracked, and when people see the crack, they can't unsee it. The trust was confirmed within weeks, the lake house legally transferred. My father was removed as trustee. Daniel's firm quietly distanced themselves from him after the ethics inquiry surfaced. But here's the part nobody expects. Winning didn't feel loud. It felt quiet. I drove to the lake house alone the first time. It was smaller than I remembered. Wood deck, pine trees, water stretching out like forgiveness. Inside, on the kitchen table, was a letter in Grandpa's handwriting. Ilara, if you're reading this, it means you chose yourself. That's all I ever wanted for you. I cried in a way I hadn't allowed myself to cry in years. Not from humiliation, from relief. I paid off my debts, opened my own design studio, hired 2 interns from community college programs, and I sent one email to my family. I'm open to relations built on respect, not control. My mother called, apologized, said she should have spoken up years ago. Daniel